In today's video, I want to delve into what I feel like is the increasing murkiness of the ethics of using AI. Right now, we're living in an era when it feels like every 5 minutes a new AI engine comes out and is somehow able to intelligently automate something that used to take much longer before but can now all be done in a split second. On top of that, all of the major chatbot engines, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, and the others, they continue to leapfrog past each other in their capacity to parse and process and output information. So just for a quick second, I want to take a moment and define what I mean when I say AI. AI, technically standing for artificial intelligence, can mean a lot of different things. But what I'd like to boil it down today is algorithmic thinking. It's not the same thing as consciousness. I've covered that in a previous video. It's a computer looking at vast amounts of data and gaining new and advanced algorithmic ways to automate previously complicated processes and streamline them for our benefit. Now, if I put this screenshot in front of you, would you recognize it? Now, most people don't think of Auto-Tune as an AI product, mainly because it preceded the current AI revolution by almost 20 years. But in my opinion, it does meet the definition. It's an algorithm that analyzes pitch within a waveform, and then it automates certain decisions within it that can bring an instrument or a voice better in tune. Many of us in the music community have seen Auto-Tune and later Melodyne and other similar algorithms to be tremendous time savers for us. So really, it's a tool that saves us time and brings us added convenience. Now, the neat thing about a technology like that is once it gets established, more geniuses come along and then build upon it and create things that couldn't have been possible if Auto-Tune had never been invented. For example, the first time I used Auto-Tune, my brain could sort of wrap around the concept of a computer program receiving an input of a sound wave and then counting periodic cycles within that sound wave to make determinations about pitch, and then find ways to alter that pitch in gentle ways to bring it closer to what the user specifies is the destination pitch. That whole thing was pretty clever. But then years later, along came Melodyne. And Melodyne offered the new and breakthrough concept of being able to do similar style pitch correction, but polyphonically, which really means it's an algorithm that can break apart the component parts of a polyphonic sound signal and then automate changes within them. It's kind of mind-boggling, and if you had told me in 1997 that that would be possible, I would have laughed at you. But if you extrapolate this concept, you can get an idea of where technology could go in the future. In the past few years, we've seen the advent of stem splitters, which are AI algorithms that can listen to a full band mix and then split it into component instrumental stems, usually at least 4 stems: bass, drums, vocals, and everything else. But even as I speak, there are more advanced models coming out that can split things even further. Most of the digital audio workstations of 2025 have or are getting stem splitter technology. And I know that Logic just added a larger stem breakout in their latest version. Now I want to go on a really quick tangent here, but I'm going to lead back to my main thought. A lot of us were highly surprised by the acquisition of the British sample library manufacturer Spitfire Audio by the VC-funded technology company Splice. Now, I don't have any insider knowledge of the motivations behind the acquisition, but one thing I do know is that Splice now owns many, many terabytes of granularly sampled orchestral and other instruments. I would venture a guess that in that collection there are literally many millions of sound files of individual notes of individual instruments from multiple mic positions. And now Splice has access to all of that. Is it totally out of the question to suggest that in the future, Splice might have the ability to do an orchestral stem splitter? I previously thought that would be impossible, but honestly, I'm not sure anymore. I also wonder whether that Splice acquisition of Spitfire might point us towards a new and upcoming quantum leap in the quality of sampled and virtual instruments. We've had full orchestra sample libraries for more than 20 years now, and while they do keep getting better and better, there's also a sense that they may have started to plateau, because we've already sampled multiple major orchestras in major halls across the world using more and more advanced sampling techniques. I've heard orchestral mock-ups from talented composers that I can't tell the difference between them and the real thing. So what's going to come next in that industry? I wouldn't be surprised if physical modeling comes in and begins to take things to the next level. Take a look at this brief video of the solo Japanese developer who created a physical modeling app called Melisma. This is fully physically modeled. He took notation from a notation program, told the engine to start with a string quartet, morph it to a woodwind quartet, and back to a string quartet, with no other manual intervention and no human expression added. In the vein of this, you may already be familiar with companies like Note Performer and MuseScore. Both of those companies are still using samples, but they're using increasingly intelligent algorithms that can take notation from a notation program and render them reasonably realistically. I'm excited to see where those engines will be in 1 or 2 years. On the vocal side of things, there's multiple companies working on vocal AI engines. I've been alpha testing an app called Cantai, which can take MIDI and lyrics from a notation program and render them using solo or choral voices. Now, it's not perfect. I'm sure you heard a mispronunciation or two in there. This program is still in an alpha state as I'm making this video, but again, just imagine where it might be in a year or two. And there are some other companies like Ace Studio or Synthesizer V, which are doing some truly incredible AI things. Let me talk about some other uses of AI outside of music creation tools. I've been really impressed with how AI can handle basic tech support for me. I previously assumed that some of the programs I used, like Dorico or Digital Performer, they're pretty niche and small, and it's not like I'm using Microsoft Word or something. So how well could I expect an AI chatbot to understand these programs? Yet every time I go to one of these chatbots to troubleshoot something with one of these programs, it turns out they're really good at it because they've parsed the PDF manuals and they know exactly where every feature of the program is. Here's an excerpt of me throwing a troubleshooting question about Dorico to Grok. I had a Dorico file which kept playing back swung when I wanted it to play back straight, and I could not find out why this was the case, and I had already checked in all the obvious places. Well, Grok walked me through step by step everything I should check, and by the time I got to the 4th or 5th thing it told me I should check, I figured out how to fix it. And here's another completely separate example of a useful music tool. Source Audio is a platform for hosting music libraries. And they just announced their new features where their AI can not only do stem splitting for you, but can also create custom versions and precisely timed cut downs of our music. Which means I can create a piece of music, feed it to the algorithm, and it will quickly create 15 and 30 and 60-second versions of my track, even in different stem configurations. And this has just saved me a bunch of work and made my music ready for advertising and promos. So particularly in the production music world, this could be a huge time saver. Now, there's a difference between all of the tools that I just mentioned up to this point versus the bigger Goliaths that are in front of us. All of these examples up until this point have been algorithms. If you want to call them AI, sure. But there is a concerning red line ahead of us. And that is the line of generative AI. When the AI crosses the line from just taking something of ours and modifying it, and now begins to allegedly create something new and crosses the line into being an author or a partial author. Now, you may already be aware that there are a few engines out there that do this. And the real core of the problem here is that in order to do this, they have studied or trained on millions and millions of pieces of existing music. And the problem with that is that the copyright owners have had their works taken from them without consent, without compensation, and without credit. That is a very significant legal challenge that is currently making its way into the court system. Now, psychologically speaking, I think that when we go to chatbots like ChatGPT, there may be some part of us that approaches that with a bit of trepidation, because these chatbots are programmed to appear to be very human-like. They can mimic conversation and interaction. We can dialogue with them, and they give the semblance of being able to understand in the way that a human would understand, except that they have vast reservoirs of knowledge behind them in their training data. Now, I think there are some uses for these chatbots that are quite helpful and harmless. I'll frequently use them as a more intelligent version of a search engine, just like the tech support for software issue that I talked about a minute ago. Chatbots can be quite impressive when they have to parse large amounts of material and then glean the relevant parts that connect back to your question. I see new products like Waves' Illusion, which is a generative sound engine. They say that all their training data is ethically sourced, and I suppose we take their word for it. But right on their homepage, I see a bit of a problem. Take a look at this simple prompt for a hi-hat loop made from wooden planks. I listen to that and I think, hey, that's pretty useful, right? If I could have the engine generate that at the tempo of my cue and just drop it in, I've got a new percussion layer, and this tool has saved me time. But here's the flip side. Within the same program, Waves Illusion, you can input a prompt like this one: haunted piano playing in an abandoned mansion. And in that example, you can hear quite distinctive melodic material. That could easily form the basis for a cue, which now raises the million-dollar question: who's writing this cue, the AI or me? And who owns the copyright for it? This leads us into very gray areas. And there are other prompt-based engines like Splice's plugin, and a new one I just discovered today from Output Sounds called CoProducer, which sits in your DAW as a plugin, listens to your music, and can then suggest and generate new audio content to add to it. And again, they also say all of their material is ethically sourced and can even be iterated upon if you want to generate further variations on something. You may know that copyright law, as it's currently stated, does protect human creation, but it does not protect machine creation. It's the same thing if you ask ChatGPT to give you a list of words that rhyme with tree. Well, in that case, it's behaving like a rhyming dictionary, and it'll give you lots of words that rhyme with tree. But what if a songwriter goes to ChatGPT and says, hey, generate me some lyrics about trees? And when ChatGPT creates those, that's a machine creation based upon ChatGPT's training data. It's not a human creation, and we have no way of knowing how original it is or where its component pieces may come from. So I think we're at this weird point in history where the onus is on us to figure out what is ethical and what is not as we're using these AI engines. There are undoubtedly a lot of great productivity enhancing ways to use AIs, and there are also ways that lead us straight into gray and dark places. And here's the catch: sometimes they're within the same plugin or interface. Some of this will hopefully end up being resolved favorably by copyright law updates. I serve as Vice President at the Society of Composers and Lyricists, where we are absolutely committed to protecting the integrity of intellectual property for creators to be able to do what only they can do: create original material. So that's a taste, a few highlights, and a few thoughts on where we are in the current state of AI development. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot more surprise innovations around the corner, maybe even tomorrow morning. Literally every day I get newsletters in my inbox with the latest AI tools that have just been created. It's an exciting time to be alive, and the technology is not going to stop innovating. The composers of tomorrow will have to keep up with the innovations of today and find ways to create originally and artistically. And I do think we all need to be very, very careful about using the generative side of AI to do the creation for us. I hope this has been interesting to you. Please do like and follow. There's a lot more happening in this area coming up. I really appreciate you watching. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.